Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Boring Enterprise Nerdcast with me, Jelena Perfilieva, and my co-host, Paul Moderman. Please say
Hi,
hi,
everyone.
Paul.
Hello. Hi, Paul.
So today we don't have any guests. It's just Paul and us, Paul and me, who will be rambling about SAP developers. So we found very interesting information. There was a SAP developer survey results posted by SAP community. And we also found some very interesting demographic data about SAP developers from United States. So today, Paul and I will just look at that, and we will just talk about it and give us give our honest opinion and feedback. And yeah, let's just hope you find it interesting.
Yeah, and if you don't find it interesting, I guess you can just
Yeah.
click pause and go
Yeah,
away. I
fast
guess.
forward.
Yeah. So what I'll do is, Jelena, I'll share my screen because I have the survey up,
All right,
and I
let's
figure
go.
we just scroll through and
Yeah.
give our live pow thoughts as they go. Share
Just
screen.
make fun about it.
Okay, so it looks like you guys can see that now. Okay, good. This is just the intro kind of stuff, and right away to me it stands out that there's 1,000 respondents to this survey, and that's because this is global, right? This is across the whole world, and there are 1,000 respondents to this. What I still am not sure of, or what I don't know off the top of my head, maybe you know this, Jelena, how many total people count as SAP developers? Like what percentage slice did we see here versus the whole?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I know that our US data suggests there are about 10,000 in the United States alone. And as we will see geographic location data here, just by that approximation, I'm guessing it's at least tens of thousands, if not, I don't know, 100,000 maybe, but tens of thousands definitely. Globally, maybe even more. So that's, I think it's maybe somewhat of decent sliced, but I really wouldn't call it statistically representative typically. But it's just to be clear, it was a community survey, which was just completely voluntary. I would say it wasn't really much advertised by SAP, I think. And that's maybe the reason why there weren't really that many answers. Yeah.
This is the thing too, is that because you're right, let's say there's 100,000 worldwide developers. I don't know what the real number is, right? 1,000 out of 100,000 is a great sample size if you have a good selection methodology.
Yeah.
But and this is not to knock SAP, but just to say out loud that this is 1,000 people who engage with the SAP community in some way. And just with that filter, you've already excluded probably the majority of people out there who touch SAP in some way. So this is it's got this sort of bouncy back and forth feeling of this is great information. It's great information from the engaged people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and even I'm just looking at SAP community homepage. It says there are 3 million SAP community users. I mean, not all of them obviously are developers because there are many functional or basis or other SAP professionals, but that gives you the range kind of. Yeah, and those are who have accounts, I guess, at SAP community.
Yeah. So who knows what the real what the real number is, but we're looking at some sort of, we're looking at an interesting slice of that total number. So a couple things that this isn't even necessarily with what's the key takeaways here, but I really did get curious too of some of the questions on here. I would love to know the US versus the rest of the world breakdown, because as you and I have talked about, the US has this kind of weird flavor of ABAP and SAP development that is, at least to our eyeballs, is a little bit less passionate than especially EU has a little bit less passion, it seems for SAP stuff. So I'm also very interested to see how certain things turn out here too, based on that sort of difference.
And I think it's a great
passion.
general note. I also would be curious about more like breakdown of who answered those questions, how, especially considering how much time it took SAP to process these results, because it took like several months between the time when survey was closed and when this was finally published. I think I had to ask someone a couple of times when were the results are coming, but yeah.
Interesting thing to note too, there's 1,000 respondents, but of course SAP is a global thing, obviously. So there's like any one individual country didn't have any higher than 90 people respond to this. So in the case of the US, 33 people are forming forming the opinion of the
speaking
US
for the whole country.
Yeah,
that's big responsibility.
Yeah, which we should claim right now. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
you other 33 people, get out of here. No, I'm kidding. But
we have 35 now.
Which I think it also makes sense too, that if there's only 33 people or 9 people or whatever, like it's hard to break down and have meaningfulness from that stuff. But anyway, so just important to note that US distinction here that we keep seeing in our own work and life here. Yeah. The other thing I note here too in the takeaways is what SAP says here. The audience is very experienced. Over like almost 60% of people have 6 or more years of professional SAP project experience. And if I had to guess, a fair percent of those people have like more than 12, more than 13, more than 14 years of that stuff, right? Because I was thinking about this too, and I'm sorry, Jelena, I'm just jabbering here. A lot of the folks that I know who have more experience than me in SAP, which is a lot. I mean, I have about 12, 13 years, I think, total experience in SAP. A lot of the folks who have more experience than me come from that like late 90s, early 2000s, like big giant wave of implementations that happened back then, as like the very first NetWeaver and some of the R3 stuff before that really kind of hit the world and got out there. And a ton of the people I know who are experienced got sort of cut their teeth in those days. Is there anything similar happening for a new generation? Like, it doesn't feel like there's necessarily this next like generational glued together cohort, you know what I mean? Like there are people who are coming up and going through this, but I don't think there's necessarily like a huge wave of these implementations that's generating like a giant baby boomers kind of thing, right? In the SAP demographics.
For the full disclosure, we will be taking coughing break. I think
so sorry.
Both Paul and I are still recovering from being sick for some time. So please ask for your forgiveness. Yep.
Yeah.
But yes, you do what you got to do. So I think it might, going back to your comments about who actually answered the survey, because I think the statement is correct about people who answered who are engaged with SAP community, but I wouldn't say that this statement would actually be correct about SAP developers in general, because I see very many young developers, but they're not going to answer any surveys online. They're just not there. They do not really engage with SAP community, for better or for worse. They have their own things going, and I don't know. Well, it's definitely different world these days than it used to be when we were still young as SAP developers, at least.
The halcyon days.
And there is that note about moving to the cloud that's at the very top now. I'm also curious how selection of people answering survey influenced the results that they got, because and also I don't remember if I even answered this survey or not, because it was such a long time ago.
Can't remember if I did either.
I think in those questions sometimes the way they're asked, it might be slightly biased. It's the way you ask questions sometimes influences answers. Like you can ask like, is this platform awesome or super awesome, and do not really leave any other options and then draw conclusions from there. I think it may have been question like, did you use like any cloud platform? Well, I did some open SAP course, so I did use SAP BTP platform. I mean, everyone does. There is no way to avoid that. But does it mean I'm cloud developer or I'm even interested in it? Not really. So I'm kind of also curious if that's actually accurate result or not.
Yeah, that's definitely true too, and especially with some of the things that I know that you and I have seen on projects in the past where like diving deep a little bit, you might have a project where developing in the web IDE or BAS is kind of how the development is done, but then everything is pushed to a local environment to an on-premises system. So I mean, you used the cloud, but you didn't use the cloud necessarily as a like a business platform. It was just like a dev sandbox. So there's some distinctions there to make. And that's not to say that's not to say that BTP is a bad dev sandbox. I think it's a good dev sandbox for SAP stuff, but there's probably at least some significant number of those people who are saying yes, but really the only thing they're doing is that BTP development path, and then things are getting back to on-prem transport paths and stuff, right? Okay, so where are folks working from today? Home office comes in 82%. I mean, that
zero surprise there, honestly.
Yeah, I have nothing to comment about that. The roles here, I like how backend, full stack, front end is all rolled up at the kind of at the top there, which I mean, for a developer survey, that also makes sense too. I'd be really curious to hear those people who say full stack, what their mix is of how much they spend in any one layer of the stack, right? Some people, I mean, you've seen this, I'm sure too, right? Some people will say full stack, but that's because they wrote an ABAP report once 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, pushed it to Fiori and mission accomplished.
So it's interesting stuff like that. There's also there's basis QA, still desktop developers showing up. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's honestly very interesting mix of like items here. I'm also curious, what would be that other? Please specify that the whole 6%. That I would love to dive into that category, because I think I cannot imagine what is not covered by this exhaustively. Something that's like non-IT related completely, because it even has like scientists and academic researchers.
I would love to meet the senior execs and VPs who took this. I'm like, why are you taking the survey? Let's talk more about that.
I guess a couple of people took that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they're just joking about it.
It's like Christian Klein coming in and taking the survey or something.
I'm also a developer. Or like the developer embedded applications, and then it's like dun dun dun. Or
death lasers,
or that. Oh my goodness! Gosh, that's quite to unpack there.
I mean, but what I think is cool, about the SAP space is you've got your, I mean, up at the top here is very clearly the ABAP folks, right?
Yep.
But like you get down there in the 10 and below mix here. There's a lot of people touching SAP for various things. I mean, there's like some tiny slice of people who are like game devs, AR, VR graphics. Like, what are you doing touching like workflows or whatever you're doing, right, in SAP? Like, I'd be super curious to meet those people and talk about what they do day to day.
Well, it was like multiple choice answer clearly. So I'm wondering if some people kind of noted their hobbies, maybe. I don't know, because I think many developers,
that could be it.
It's strange, we do development in our spare time.
Yeah, it's true.
Sometimes. So maybe it's just I don't know.
Really
it's hard to tell. I think maybe question wasn't maybe stated like, what do you do professionally, or I don't know. but it's just a speculation, but it's definitely interesting. Oh, geography. That's
Here's the here's the geographic breakdown. Again, both by visual relative size, but then also the top 14 have actual numbers here, which again, like we discussed earlier, just kind of keeps your kind of your head on straight of like, oh yeah, there's a big US block here. In this survey, that's 30 people. Right?
Yeah.
There's a big Germany square here. In this survey, that's 90 people, right? So just kind of keep your perspective on straight when you think about who is answering this and the influence that it has on SAP too, you know.
I was quite surprised to see so many more people in Germany. It's not surprising. There are many SAP developers in Germany, obviously, but I just didn't really expect proportions to be the way they are. But again, it's a big big disclaimer about people actually answering survey versus real demographics. But
and of course, interesting to me too is that India shows up with 64 out of this. Like in my head, I always assumed that India had the largest contingent of SAP developers, right? Because between companies in India that may run SAP for whatever reason, but also for lots of the offshoring that other nations do, and that Tata, Accenture, all those places have enormous campuses in India. It was a little surprising to me, and I mean, maybe there's just less attention paid to this stuff in India, but like I still kind of expect that overall, from a pure numbers standpoint, India probably has the biggest representation in total. Yeah, even if it doesn't show up on this survey, you know.
That would be especially in development space. I mean, SAP professionals, that might be different breakdown. Development, definitely outsourcing had been going on to India, so that's why you see US less represented here. It's been going on for years, so not surprising. But all right. Let's see what else is there.
This is the project space in terms of this one here caught my eye a little bit in terms of how many SAP projects have you done in the last 12 months. And it's a very interesting spread here, right? There's not a clear like super clump anywhere, because you've got the 13% who say one, which could either be one SAP project, but then I did other things, or I was on one big massive SAP
it was
project.
Multi-year project.
And then slide it over to the right here, you're kind of probably picking up more of the consultants and that kind of stuff, right? Of just the folks who bounce anyway, whether you're an employee or not. You get that sort of like 5 or more. That's there's been many years of my past 10 years in SAP Dev. Ever since I've worked for consulting firms, I would have checked the 5 or more box. I'm sure I did. I remember what I said, but like, if you kind of skate through and you're doing advising development, you're absolutely doing 5 or more, things like that.
Yeah, that's probably consulting people, I guess, with 4 and more. I just want to say the choice of graphics, though, it's very weird for this specific metric. It's, first of all, it's clearly not multiple choice, so it could be like pie chart, like the one on the left. It's why go is like 100% when your largest number is 26. I mean, for analytics company, it's very disappointing presentation, I think. So the one on the left, though, it's funny how 8% are not sure if they have actually developed integrations or extensions.
Yeah,
it's like you don't know what you're doing, or is it like I know what I'm doing, but I'm not really clear if it counts as integration or extension. So I don't know. Maybe it was that part, but
I think there's probably, whenever you see like, this is one of those things. I can't remember what show I was watching, but like, it's one of those things where, and I don't know whether the numbers are big enough here, but like, if you put out a survey that said, hey, would you like thumbtacks driven into your eyeballs? And you give it to enough people, some percent of people would say yes, right?
Yeah.
Even though it sounds insane. and I'm not saying that these 8% of people are that level of whatever, but especially like look at because this one, the project activity too has 3% where they're like, I don't know. And you're like, how could you not know? But maybe they're interpreting the wording in some weird way that we're not reading it right.
It's OCD people who need very, very clear definition of the question, I guess. Like what do you count as a project? I don't know. Oh boy, integration points.
Yeah. When I read, I sort of skimmed this. This didn't stand out to me as any kind of like shock or awe or anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's like no shit, Sherlock. I don't know why this was even a question, to be honest. I feel like with a couple of those questions, SAP was fishing for specific information, to be honest. It's like, I don't know what it really tells you other than support some kind of sales pitch somewhere like, 70% of developers. Okay.
Do you know what I just realized? And I don't know whether this is a good thing to say on the air or not. This is a great video podcast. This is a terrible audio podcast.
That's a good
anybody point. I mean, we can still publish it, but like anybody who's listening to this, please, if you have a chance, go view the video of this podcast because we are showing things and we're talking about it, and like this is anyway, I wanted to make sure I raised my hand and say that because I didn't think of it until just now that this is a terrible audio podcast format.
It's a big facepalm moment. So for those who are just listening, who are looking at the chart here,
this would be a great
showing that European Digital Core presents apparently close to 80% of integrations, which is 0% surprise to anyone. All right.
Yeah. And there's a purple bar here, and there's a green bar there, and there's a yellow bar that's twice as long over here. This is again, sorry, listeners. This is the jerk treatment you're going to get for this episode. So there's a breakdown of the relationship to SAP, whether you're part of IT, you're part of an implementation partner, independent consultant, SAP employee, that kind of stuff. What I thought was a couple things here. 9% of responses are SAP employees, which is not bad, but it is like
not great either.
It's a little telling
too much.
Or not telling. It may be if you're like, I would suggest that, and maybe this is something we don't see, but I would suggest to SAP, keep that information somewhere else.
Yeah, I would. Right? I agree completely. I mean, not to discriminate, because I mean they're also SAP developers, but I think for the purposes of the survey, for the community, I think SAP employees should have been, I don't know, maybe even just not really participate in that, because that really,
I mean,
SAP development for SAP employees and everyone else, it's completely different ballgame. I don't think you can mix them in the same survey and get accurate results.
And maybe they have their own internal surveys. I don't know, but whatever it is, my gut says don't put them in this survey results here.
If they wanted to answer, and it would be interesting to look at the numbers again, employees versus non-employees. I think that's clearly where you would see very different pictures. So it's a good point. But again, top number, how many percent is that? Like
52%. 52% of respondents to this question, 412 responses. As part of their company's IT.
So those are, I guess, maybe working for like customers in their internal IT, which is I totally seems accurate to me.
And then the 34% respond, say that they're working for an implementation partner. My only slight surprise is that the sum of companies IT and implementation partner isn't like even bigger than it is. Because in my head I thought that's like almost all of the bases of what people are doing out there. But again, that's the surveys are supposed to find, so that's good.
And I guess also consultants are too busy making money to go answer surveys. So it's internal employees. Oh, Let me go to community.
Oh, actually, that's a good point though too, because I didn't add the internal consultants in there. Anyway, yeah, it's like
Oh, independent consultant is 18%.
18%. Yeah.
All right. So like roughly, I mean, if we discount
If you
the
add
S&P
that
employees,
all,
like half and half, like internal resources and consultants. So
it's definitely got a flavor of it is the outside world for sure, and that's good.
Yep.
So the thing we touched on earlier, this is for listeners, this is the question about their the respondents' overall experience in general software. And in this case here, it's people with just general software experience. 77% of the respondents had 6 or more years of software. Yeah.
Not necessarily with SAP.
Yeah. And that's I mean, that leaves, 22, 23% ish on the other side. And I'd be curious to see how that breaks down with other tech communities. I can see for sure where you might expect that the React community or the Angular community or whatever has a very different breakdown of those numbers, right? Just be curious to see that. But also not surprising, because I think our experience is that lots of those SAP devs are pretty experienced people. So there is another set of questions here about experience in terms of, there's a breakdown of hobbyist, professional, and student for some of these categories here in this next section. And there's some kind of general breakdowns, and I think some of these are interesting here too. Some of them are not surprising. I mean, it's not surprising that 85% of those who do backend services do them in a professional context.
But look at those. So there are, just for those on the listening to the podcast, there are 2 bars. Yellow represents professional experience, and blue represents hobby experience, understanding. Yeah. And it's funny that in some areas it's like blue is even taller than yellow, so people have more like hobby, and that goes back to my note from before, that developers, they do development as a hobby sometimes, or do like other types of development. So yeah, totally, I'm not surprised to see people kind of working professionally with like SAP applications. Obviously hobbies. SAP application developers are very low number. I'm surprised it's above 0, but I see many people are interested in gaming and mobile and web development as a hobby, and I think it's actually great. So it's really good to see these results.
I am pleased, a little surprised, but also very pleased to see these categories that have where the hobbyist and the student things are, their sum total is higher than the professional category, because I think that is they're sort of leading indicators, I guess, of how the next 5 years, 10 years will shake out, right? Like the ML data science and the augmented / virtual reality. Like, my hope is that those things continue to crack their way into the enterprise in some way, and then us dinosaurs get the chance to monkey around with that stuff too, in a professional context, right? Yeah. Okay. So next is the tools and cloud providers section. And I think no surprise here, there is a languages question. And the top performer, of course, is ABAP. 80% of those who responded to the programming languages question have used ABAP in their projects. 65% have used JavaScript or TypeScript. I would argue those are the same language, but whatever. Those given SAP's for development in the SAP professional context, it is not surprising to me that those are the top 2 by a long shot. Right. It makes a lot of sense. But again, I'm still pleased to see that these folks who touch SAP in some way are also touching the Kotlins and the Scalas and the Rusts in places here and there. I mean, that's still, I think that's cool. And I would love to see more, crossover kind of show and tell stuff of, hey, here's what I did with my SAP data, and I messed with it in Rust in this particular way, and did whatever people might be doing in that crossover world. That's the kind of stuff that I love to read the SAP community blogs about that stuff. I love to see show and tells of that kind of stuff. That's what I would really love to see is the folks using these less common languages, less common in the ABAP world, or less common in the SAP world languages. What are you up to? What are you doing? Let's hear more. I'd be really curious.
Yeah, the only thing to note is we can see that kind of exotic, at least for SAP world languages like Ruby, Rust, and Scala, they're clocking in at 1% here. Yeah. And with how many, like 1,000 response, that's like 10 people. So I'm guessing that's DJ, Thomas Young, probably Rich Hammond, and a couple more people at SAP who are maybe responding with that. And so it's not surprising. There is just a bit of inconsistency, I think, between this graph and numbers that we've seen before. So from the previous graph, we've seen people responded about 40% were backend developers, 40% identified as full stack, 80% using ABAP. So I don't know, maybe people who kind of identify as front-end developers actually using ABAP still.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe some backend developers also kind of dabbling in JavaScript on the side and their hobby projects. So yeah, very, very interesting. I think that's maybe these numbers maybe have more significance than kind of self-identification of what your role is.
Yeah, that's true.
Very, very interesting.
Using cloud providers. The question is, are you using cloud providers for your dev projects? 58% say yes.
I mean, what kind of question
whether
is
that's whether that's SAP or not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a little unclear.
I know.
I mean, yeah.
Are you in your daily life? Are you like breathing in or breathing out? I don't know. It's honestly
that's
just silly questions to ask.
Yeah. Learning. So questions about how community members learn. The most used resources there, dev community websites and forums.
Because that's where the survey was, I think.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. It's like a web-based survey asking, are you reading this on a screen?
Like, yeah, exactly. Do you have internet access?
Yeah. How else are you? Yeah. So it's a little weird, but it's like, what I do like is the right behind the dev community stuff is the online tutorials and how-to videos and webinars. Like, I know that maybe not SAP, but like definitely a lot of the other things I monkey around with, the online tutorials and how-to videos, they're very helpful. They're very helpful. Like, I think video is still under tapped in terms of how much you can use that to get people where they need to go for developer stuff.
Yeah, I think there are definitely different uses for videos and for like tutorials where you give people like code examples, because obviously if it involves really like coding effort, looking at video doesn't really give you much, and it's preferable to have something I can either search or copy paste even in my test system. But there are some things like setting up your system, or maybe when you want to show the results and talk about maybe debugging or something, that's where video is much more beneficial than any text. So I think in choosing your media wisely, that's very important. And also go into the right media for right information, because many times I see people giving comments like, oh, like you didn't cover this or that. I'm like, I mean, come on now, that's a like 10-minute video. What did you expect?
What do you want? Yeah. Tinier things that I also think could be better,
Mhm.
or that I wish would be better, would be the hands-on labs and meetups. Like, I would love if there were just more meetups in the world. I think that'd be great. I mean, like, maybe we'll see that number climb up a little bit as COVID wanes a little bit, but like, I would love to see meetups climb a little bit in that. I would love to see people physically or virtually, like, getting together and like pounding on things together in some way.
Yeah.
There's a breakdown by age range. I didn't look at this in depth. It's not, I don't know if there's I don't have a good response to this information here.
Yeah. And for those, again, just listening, it's honestly just unreadable graph. I'm really not sure, what it tells us. I guess SAP tried to break down this by age, like which age groups prefer which learning resources.
Yeah.
Which I think maybe makes sense, but to be honest, I'm with my vision, I'm struggling to even read this. It does appear like I'm not really seeing any like trends by age group, to be honest.
Yeah.
It seems to be pretty balanced. So there is really no huge difference like, 1825 are you? I mean, are there 1825 is such a low number here to begin with that there is nothing really to talk about. So it's like 25-34 age group versus 45, I guess, and older. And I see very low variations. It looks like younger group prefers on my own option using available documentation, but by very slight margin. So I don't know. I guess I don't really have any significant conclusions here either.
Yeah.
Next piece is interesting.
There's a pretty even split between whether the folks have subscriptions to SAP Learning Hub. It's like 50-50, so I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah.
Except to say that, again, our data is somewhat skewed because the people responding to this survey have already found themselves at an SAP community site, right? So
I'm going to take the fifth on Learning Hub.
The one here that like there's a response here for how many technical certification programs have you done in the past 4 years? The problem I see with that is there's no bar for 0. Like I haven't
exactly.
I'm not certified in anything over the last 4 years.
Me neither.
So
and also there is also no like SAP versus non-SAP, because to me, if that was the exact question, that might be many certifications. I'm not sure what it really means for SAP world. I know many people are taking Microsoft and other certifications. So, but SAP certification is a different beast. It's more expensive, more maybe difficult to prepare for. So I don't know. It's very like average body temperature in a hospital type of statistics. So I'm really not sure if it's super meaningful. And I also I'm confused why there is no 0. I guess they just omitted this information. I don't know. Or maybe it was maybe it just wasn't an option.
Yeah,
it's just weird. Yeah.
The best ways people get help: web search engine, Google search. It says 30%. I'm actually surprised it's only 30%.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I honestly gotta suspect there's like, do you know anybody who doesn't start with Google and then go to the other places, right? Like, Google might turn up SAP community answers, but like I use Google to search for it.
So the question is stated is, what is your preferred resource if you need help or have a challenge with SAP technology or tool you're working with? I guess it looks like it wasn't multiple choice, so numbers roughly add up. And so top response is, of course, web search engine like Google, and second top is SAP community. I'm wondering how many people who replied SAP community actually meant web search, because that's how I typically arrive at SAP community. I never use like their internal search because it's just not very helpful most of the time. So I just search in general, and then from there I might arrive at many different places. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe many people really meant Google search when they replied SAP community. But again, it's not surprising if question is asked on SAP community itself. That's like, okay, I'm already here.
Yeah. Common media site usage. I mean, I don't have anything interesting to say about this one for sure.
I saw this one before. It was just a little bit surprising to me personally. So this is professional use of common media sites. It's like, how often do you visit any of the following sites for professional reasons? So that's important note to me. And the top one is YouTube, followed by LinkedIn, Stack Overflow, and then Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. I actually, for professional use, I was surprised to see YouTube that high, because I would say for professional use, YouTube for me personally would be like much lower. I don't use, honestly, Stack Overflow that much, but yeah, I would probably put like LinkedIn higher, or even Twitter, or even Reddit, to be honest. But yeah, but I'm guessing people just use YouTube tutorials and videos there, and that's why they rated it that way. So yeah, it was a bit surprising to me personally. But, yeah, found out something new.
So that's it. Yeah. That's the dev survey here. Again, lots of interesting things and lots of nits to pick, I guess, as we found out for ourselves here. You know, we've been rambling for a while here, Jelena.
Yeah.
Should we button things up here and get this video out to the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So yeah. Thank you everyone for painfully listening to us, and probably better watching this recording on video. Yeah, it was I think it was very interesting information to look at. And if I can leave our universe with just one request, probably maybe next year try to go and answer the survey, so that we can have better results. And and hopefully, especially people in the United States, like, hey guys, you need to wake up and go and represent. Otherwise, the rest of the world is taken over. Yeah, that's all for me. Paul, do you have any parting words?
No. One is that also, along with yours, Jelena, about people participating, I think we should. I think my thing that I want to leave on SAP's doorstep is, next time around, think about reserving those SAP employee responses for something else, or take them out, or account for them in some way, because I think it feels like SAP developers have a very different experience than developers who work with SAP.
Yeah, definitely agree.
That's all.
Yeah. All right, folks. So here you have it, and thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.